A gute Woche. The Rebbe Soll Gesund Sein started off today's Farbrengen by mentioning that today is the second Shabbos of Chanukah. Now the only way you could have two Shabbosim during Chanukah is if the first Shabbos is Chanukah. Obviously, since Chanukah is 8 days, so there's always one Shabbos, and there's only two Shabbosim if the first day is also Shabbos. So in other words, we're here in the second Shabbos of Chanukah. And we have a general rule that no'atz tchilosim b'seifon v'seifon b'tchilosim, which means that the beginning of everything in Kedusha is always connected to the end of it, as well as the end of it being connected to the beginning, which is also brought out by the fact that although there are 8 days of Chanukah, but the first and 8th day of Chanukah have in it a special significance, being that it encompasses within itself all of Chanukah, as it is also brought out in the Kriyas HaTeira, in the reading of the Teira, both on the first day and on the last day. On the first day, it mentions all the Nesiim, that they all brought a carbon together, and then it speaks about the particular carbon that Nachshon ben Aminadav brought from Shevet Yehuda. On the last day of Chanukah, we have the Kriyas HaTeira connected with the 8th day of Chanukah, but besides that, we also have the Kriyas HaTeira, which mentions it summarizes all the karbanas that all the Nesiim brought throughout Chanukah, which means again that both the first day and the 8th day of Chanukah, besides being one day of Chanukah, it also includes all of Chanukah. This is also brought out by the fact that on the first day of Chanukah they found a jug of oil, which they used this jug of oil for all 8 days. And the significance of finding this jug of oil, besides the fact that they were able to use it for 8 days, is also the fact that they were able to be mekayim the mitzvah of Chanukah, the mitzvah of adlokas ha-meneira, of the kindling of the meneira in the Beis Hamikdash b'derech hateva. And here the Rebbe Soll Gesund Sein discussed ba'arichus at length the importance of being mekayim mitzvahs b'derech hateva, coinciding with the laws of nature, which means, and the Rebbe also again brought down a story, a famous story of the Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe on his way to prison wanted to be Mechadish de Levana. And he was going on a ship, and he did not go to be Mechadish de Levana while the ship was moving. First of all, because it would disturb his concentration, and secondly, it may have been connected with a sakana. So he asked the person that was driving the ship, was moving the ship, the captain of the ship, to stop the ship so he should be able to be Mechadish de Levana. The person didn't want to stop, so the Alter Rebbe, obviously b'derech nes, in a miraculous way, caused that the ship should stop. Afterwards, the Alter Rebbe again asked the person to stop the ship, and this time the person obviously stopped it because he saw how the Alter Rebbe was able to stop it miraculously, and then he stopped it, and the Alter Rebbe went ahead and was Mechadish de Levana. So the question is, why did the Alter Rebbe have to let the ship continue going, and then have to ask the person again to stop the ship, and first be Mechadish de Levana when the person stopped the ship? Why wasn't he Mechadish de Levana when he himself caused it to stop miraculously? And the explanation is given, as the Rebbe once explained, that a mitzvah is supposed to be performed, that it should be within the laws of nature. And if the Alter Rebbe would have been Mechadish de Levana while the ship stopped miraculously, then he would have been mekayim a mitzvah which would have been going against the laws of nature. And the purpose of Teira mitzvahs is to do the Teira mitzvahs in the laws of nature. And that is also why the Alter Rebbe originally, and the Rebbe also explained today, that there is a difference between the actual mitzvah and the hachana to the mitzvah. The actual mitzvah has to be performed according to the laws of nature. The hachana to the mitzvah, the preparation to the mitzvah, is preferably, it should be performed within the laws of nature. But if for some reason or another it's impossible even to do those hachonas within those laws of nature, so it's not mandatory for a mitzvah for the hachonas also to be performed within the laws of nature. And therefore the Alter Rebbe originally asked the person to stop the ship without having to perform a miracle, because the Alter Rebbe would have preferred him being Mechadish Levana completely within the laws of nature, not having to, in other words, not needing to stop first the ship miraculously and then having the person see that it was stopped miraculously and then stopping it himself. So in other words, we see the importance of being Mekayim, the mitzvah, within the laws of nature. So in the same way, the idea of Chanukah was brought out that that they found a jug of oil, which was within the laws of nature, finding the jug of oil, which although there are some mefarshim that explain, there's a famous question that's asked, why is it that Chanukah is 8 days? The miracle only took place for 7 days. And some people explain that the first miracle was that they found the jug of oil. But nonetheless, the actual finding of the jug of oil can't be considered completely out of the laws of nature, because it's within the laws of nature to understand that they missed one jug of oil and they were able to find it. In the same way, there's a shaila, again the same famous question, why is Chanukah 8 days? And one of the tirutzim of the Beis Yosef is that they divided the oil that they found into 8 separate parts, and every day they only lit one part. So the first day was a miracle as well. But that explanation is also something which is very difficult to understand and to accept, because how could they have relied that a miracle would take place? A person is supposed to do a mitzvah, and a person is supposed to do the mitzvah expecting the mitzvah to be performed within the laws of nature. So if the first day they only put the oil, enough, an eighth of the oil that they found, which means that according to the laws of nature, they wouldn't have been able to perform the mitzvah even for 1 day. So the question is, were they allowed to do that? So the answer that is more accepted, is that the first day they used all the oil, but none of the oil was used up. And therefore they were able to use the oil the following day, because none of the oil of the previous day was used up, as the Rebbe explains at length in Likutei Sichos, in the various different explanations why Chanukah is 8 days. But in any case, what the Rebbe was explaining today was that the idea of a mitzvah, and as well as the miracle of Chanukah, was the idea that they were able to perform the mitzvah within the laws of nature. Which brings out this idea that a Jew, in other words, every Jew coming down into this world, since Hashem wants him to perform the mitzvahs, obviously Hashem gives him the opportunity to perform the mitzvah. Because it doesn't make sense that Hashem asks a Jew, Im b'chukeisai tilechu. And as Chazal tell us that the word im means tachanunim, that the Eibishter is actually pleading by a Jew, and he's asking the Jew to perform mitzvahs. And on the other hand, the Jew is unable to perform the mitzvah. It's something which doesn't make sense. If the Eibishter wants a Jew to perform the mitzvah, the Eibishter certainly makes it possible for the Jew to perform the mitzvah. But from Chanukah we learn that not only that it's possible for a Jew to perform the mitzvah, but furthermore it's possible for a Jew to perform the mitzvah within the laws of nature. Which in the Asius of Chassidus it means that a Jew obviously by nature is higher than the world. A Jew has a nefesh elikis and neshama, which is part of godliness, and that part of godliness could transcend the laws of nature. But on the other hand, the ultimate purpose of a Jew in performing Torah mitzvahs is not to perform Torah mitzvahs despite the difficulties that we have in this world. In other words, that although within the laws of nature may be difficult to be Mekayim Torah mitzvahs, nevertheless the Jew will perform Torah mitzvahs. The objective of Torah mitzvahs is that a Jew within the laws of nature, in other words, not only in the Shem Havaya, which the Shem Havaya is higher than Teva. It's the Shem which is connected to the Eibishter, representing the idea that the Eibishter is Haya Heve V'yiyah Ki Echad, that the Eibishter is higher than the concept of time. So obviously higher than all the limitations of this world. But even as Hashem is called Elikim, which Elikim is B'gematria HaTeva, which means that the numerical value of the word Elikim is the same numerical value as the word Hateva, which shows that we're dealing here with this aspect of godliness, how the Eibishter actually is creating nature. So that also a Jew has the capability, and the Eibishter certainly gives him this capability of performing the mitzvahs within the laws of nature, not having to break the laws of nature. And only then is the mitzvah that a Jew performs the tachlis hashleimus. The Rebbe also explained that there are certain mitzvahs that a Jew is incapable of being mekayim, of performing during Golus. As we all know that certain karbanos we can't do and other things that we can't do because of Golus. But it doesn't mean that the Jew can't perform Torah mitzvahs. Because obviously everything that the Jew is supposed to perform, the Eibishter gives him the possibility to perform. The only thing is that those things that the Eibishter doesn't give him the possibility to perform, obviously at this point in time he's not supposed to perform them. And the way he could perform them, that is the best possible way that the Eibishter wants him to perform. As we find pertaining to a convert, that the law is that a convert, in order for him to become a convert, one of the things that he has to do is bring a carbon. And if he doesn't bring a carbon, he's not yet a complete convert. But that is only when the bringing of a carbon is possible. Today, when the bringing of a carbon is something which is an impossibility, so he becomes a complete convert even if he doesn't bring a carbon. Which again brings out this point that a Jew, everything that he is supposed to do and that's important for him to do, what the Eibishter wants him to do, he is able to do, and he's able to do within the laws of nature. And those things that he cannot do, which is mipnei chata'enu galinu me'artzenu, so we find ourselves in Golus, so obviously those things at this point in time he's not supposed to perform. The Rebbe also said that this idea of bringing something, that everything that you should be able to be mekayim, begashmius, and bederech hateva, within the laws of nature, is also connected to the concept of hafotzes hamayonis chutza, yafutze meinesecha chutza, that yafutze meinesecha chutza is also something which is expected to be performed within the laws of nature. In other words, there was a certain time that yafutze meinesecha chutza wasn't even expected. Before the Arizal, before there was the mitzvah legal zeisa chochma, when it became important, when it became a mitzvah to reveal the chochma, the hidden secrets of the Torah, pnimius HaTorah, so then there was no mitzvah to be megala pnimius HaTorah, and it wasn't really basically missing. When it came this man of Arizal, and furthermore when it came this man of the Baal Shem Tov, and even more so when it came the time of the Alter Rebbe, so that's when the idea of Yafutza Meinesecha Chutza became important for every single Jew, that every Jew is obligated to spread the Mayonis of the Baal Shem Tov. And these Mayonis of the Baal Shem Tov will eventually bring Ka'asi Mar, which is Melech HaMashiach. And in this bringing of the Mayonis Chutza, bringing the wellsprings of Teres Achsidus to outside, to the Chutza, there's also two ways. There was the times of the Alter Rebbe when people were extremely poor. And as the Alter Rebbe writes many letters, the Alter Rebbe writes, I know the tzei koitim, which means how difficult it is, begashmias. People were very poor. And especially in the times of the Mittler Rebbe, as it is known, that the Mittler Rebbe wrote many svarim. And the Mittler Rebbe wrote a letter together with the sefer that he wrote, and he writes in the letter that he knows it's difficult for people to pay the money to buy the sefer. We're dealing with his chassidim, that they found it difficult to find the few, the Rebbe said the par kopkis, which means the few cents that was needed to buy the sefer. So he printed part of the sefer at one time and part of it at a different time, in order for the people to be able to have enough money to be able to buy the sefer. But now, in living in this time when we're holding closer and closer to Mashiach, so we find ourselves in a time which, Baruch Hashem, we're in this country, where things are Bahar Chava. In other words, the idea of anius, of people being that poor, as in the times of the Alter Rebbe and Mittler Rebbe, aren't as widespread, Baruch Hashem. And the idea is that the Gashmias could sometimes bring a person away from Yiddishkeit. As we find Vayishman, Yeshurun, Vayivot, that when Yidden, which are referred to as Yeshurun, which Yeshurun not only shows on Yidden on a regular level, but it refers to Yidden on being on a very high level. And nevertheless, when it's Vayishman, when the Jews have it very well begashmias, so sometimes it could bring to Vayivot, that Jews rebel against Hashem, because since they have this plentifulness in Gashmias, that could bring them to stray away from the Eibishter. The Frierdiker Rebbe coming to America and bringing Teres Achsidus to, as the Rebbe always refers to it, as Chotzi Kader Atachten, the lower hemisphere of this world. In other words, the Torah was given
in Chotzi Kader Ha'elyon, in the higher hemisphere. And the Teres Achsidus was brought through the Frierdiker Rebbe to this world, to the lower hemisphere, to the Chotzi Kader HaTachten. So the Frierdiker Rebbe also gave this capability and the Keach for a Jew, not only that the Gashmi shouldn't take him away, but on the contrary, that he should be able to take this Gashmias and utilize it in Kedusha, that he should have Archava B'Gashmias, and this Archava B'Gashmias should be able to be utilized in Kedusha, which is bringing this idea of being Mekayim Mitzvahs B'derech HaTeva even furthermore. In other words, besides the fact that the mitzvahs are done within the laws of nature, but in the laws of nature itself, in a world which things are plentiful, where you have the Gashmias B'Archava, and nevertheless you're able to be Mekayim Teiru Mitzvahs. The Rebbe also continued and spoke about Vayigash, which we start reading in today's Parsha, that we find Vayigash Elav Yehuda, which is the connection between Yehuda and Yosef, which also shows to the Echad Be'echad Yigoshu, which means that one and one comes together, which there is the one which is Hashem Echad, the Eibishter himself, which is referred to as Hashem Echad, and there is a Jew, which the Jew is also referred to as the Gay Echad Ba'aretz, the one nation in this world, and this Echad Be'echad comes together in such a way that nothing can separate them, and that's when will be the ultimate in this connection between the Jew and the Eibishter, when it will be V'hoya Hashem L'melech Al Kol Haaretz, Bayei Mahu Yi, and that day it will be Hashem Echad U'Shmei Echad, which Hashem Echad refers to the Eibishter being Echad, U'Shmei refers to Yisrael, which is also Echad, and they're together Hashem Echad U'Shmei Echad. The Rebbe in the second Sikha, this is Bekitzer what the Rebbe said in the first Sikha. In the second Sikha, the Rebbe explains that the fact that Shabbos was the first day of Hanukkah has a special significance, and it's connected to the idea that we find in Parsha Bahar, the Pasuk tells us that V'hoyu kisaveu al haaretz, when Jews will go into Eretz Yisrael, it'll be V'shavsa haaretz Shabbos LaHashem, that there will be Shemitah. So the famous question is, there won't be Shemitah as soon as they come into Eretz Yisrael. First it will be the 6 years that they work on their fields. And first the 7th year is Shemitah. So why does the Pasuk, in the Pasuk it sounds as if, as soon as they enter Eretz Yisrael, it will be Shemitah. So the explanation is, that although the actual Shemitah comes after the 6 years, but the idea is that a Jew, when as soon as he goes into Eretz Yisrael, he realizes that the ultimate intention is Shemitah. In other words, the ultimate intention of this world is the connection to Hashem. A Jew is being connected to Hashem. But although the Jew is supposed to be connected to Hashem, that's the ultimate intention, but the Eibishter wanted that a Jew should not only have this connection in a way which transcends this world. In other words, that although he's in this world, nevertheless he has a connection. The Eibishter wanted that he should have the 6 years of working, and nevertheless he should be connected. So in other words, that the Shemitah should come as a result of the 6 years. But not because the 6 years in itself has an importance. The main importance is the V'shav Sa'aretz Shabbos LaHashem, that a Jew is in a Shabbos-dika situation, in a Shabbos-dika Maimed U'Matzav, and that Shabbos-dika Maimed U'Matzav means a Jew is completely connected to Hashem. But in order for a Jew to connect also his Gashmis to Hashem, and that should come within the laws of nature, so that's why we need the 6 years before. And that's brought out by the idea that this year, before we have the week of Hanukkah, we start off with a Shabbos, which also brings out the idea that we start off with the main point. The main point is the Jew being connected to the Eibishter in a Shabbos-dika way. But the only way for a Jew truly to be connected is when he goes through 6 days, and then he comes to the second Shabbos. And that's the second Shabbos which we are now. And that's especially important when we're in a year that's referred to as a Shnas Nisim, Tov Shin Nun, which the Rosh Tevas, the acronym, is Tehei Shnas Nisim, which the idea of a Nes, of a miracle as opposed to Teva nature, is as the difference between Shabbos and the days of the week. The days of the week, a Jew is involved within the laws of nature. He does the work which is connected to nature in order to make a livelihood. When it comes Shabbos, the Jew is connected to Hashem higher than this world. And especially the fact that this year is the year that Rosh Hashanah was also on Shabbos, which also brings out the idea that we're supposed to be in a Shabbos-dik way, so that, and even more emphasizes this concept that's brought out by the fact that Hanukkah starts off with a Shabbos and ends off with a Shabbos. In other words, that the main idea is Shabbos, the connection to Hashem. It's just that in order for a Jew to reach the Tachlis HaShleimus, the ultimate in Shleimus, is only comes through his own Aveda, which this is accomplished through the 6 days of work, and then he comes to the Shabbos. The Rebbe also mentioned that since we're standing on V'zeis Chanukah, which the last day of Chanukah is referred to as Zeis Chanukah, which word Zeis means Mare be'etzba ve'emer zeh. In other words, you can actually point with your finger and show it, which means that the things have to be clear and begoli. The Rebbe said that it's especially appropriate that there should be a Farbrengen, and the Rebbe suggested there should be a Farbrengen after Mincha. In other words, in the time of Shalosh Shudas, on the time of Sudas Shlishis, Raiva de Raiven, there should be a Chassidische Farbrengen. The Rebbe also suggested there should be a Farbrengen, especially in Malava Malka, Mitzoi Shabbos, there should be a Chassidische Farbrengen. And in this Chassidische Farbrengen, there should be Hachlotes, resolutions in connected with Limud Chassidus, with learning of Chassidus. And not only there should be a resolution, but the resolution should come down in a pale mamish, that should actually be fulfilled, the resolution, in a way that you could say zeis, that you could actually point it with your finger and say, this is it, this is what I'm learning, this is the Chassidus I learned. And then eventually the Eibishter should help that through these Chassidus Farbrengens, connected with Zeis Chanukah, we should also be zeicha to see Mashiach and be able to say Zeis, this is him. In other words, actually point with your finger and point at Mashiach and point at Eliyahu, point your finger and show this is Eliyahu Hanavi and this is Pinchas, Zeh Eliyahu. In other words, all these things should be actually visible and bepeil mamish begashmis. The Rebbe also mentioned the idea of giving Chanukah geld, and he said although Chanukah geld is given during Chanukah, but nevertheless someone that for some reason or another didn't give Chanukah geld, or feels he didn't give enough Chanukah geld, should certainly be mashlim after Chanukah, and give those that he was supposed to give and he didn't give, or those that he didn't give enough, he should give them more. And through being Mekayim, the Minig Yisrael, again, will be zeicha to see quicker in our days the Zeis Chanukah, in other words, be able to show that this is the Menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Menorah in the Beis HaMikdash is something which we will actually be able to see. As the din is, that you could actually light, according to some poskim, that even not a Kayin could light the Menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. Because the Menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, although it's normally lit inside the Heichel, but according to some poskim, it can be taken out of the Heichel and be lit outside of the Heichel. So Mela will be able to see it with our own eyes. And the Rebbe mentioned also the story that the Likutei Torah was printed. And someone said, well, that is the concept of Mashiach, because Pnimius HaTorah was revealed. And the Reb Marash said that Mashiach is something which we need. It should be Be'eni Basu. We should be able to see him with our own eyes. Not only the idea of the revelation of Pnimius HaTorah, and this should happen speedily in our days. A gute Woche.